It's a good question. I think I'm now so fabulously old that I write novels by giving myself homework, by giving myself a job to do that I haven't done before. So although most of the work that I've done has been engaged with the problem of good and evil and, you know, the psychology behind good and evil, what the differences are, and what makes people do the extraordinary things they do, both good and bad, that had been done in lots and lots of different ways over the course of 11 novels, and most recently, as you say, in the Werewolf trilogy, which was a supernatural armature for examining those same questions. But I'd never done a straight murder story, so it seemed like a good idea. I mean, it seemed that, you know, the crime genre or thriller territory allows you to explore those questions, but it also offers you an opportunity to make a very forward-driving narrative. The previous books were not known especially for having plot. My natural style as a writer is to be digressive and discursive and parenthetical and a little bit ironic. And I knew that if I was going to write a thriller, much of that was going to have to be reined in. So it was a kind of challenge. It was an exercise that I set myself, and it's why I feel like I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm kind of learning as I go. But it was a steep learning curve. So I hope I've got better at plot anyway. That's the main thing. I don't know that it's more difficult to write about violence in the real world than violence that has some kind of supernatural underpinning. Because what interests me about those behaviours, whichever realm they're in, is the underlying psychology. And you can explore that just as fruitfully with angels and devils as you can with human beings. I mean, most of the books that I've written, whether they've employed supernatural tropes, they've always really been about the problem of being human. So in Lucifer, you know, what we're really looking at is the human condition. It's just taking an extraordinary outsider and putting him in the human shoes to look at what it's like for us, much more than what it's like for him. The business of violence, of course, has to be treated differently when you're dealing with the real world, or when you're dealing with events that the real world has actually supplied. It does require a different sort of sensitivity, and you can't go down the cartoonish or comic route with any of that because it's too serious, because people actually do get horribly murdered. So it doesn't have the kind of ironical or humorous scope that, I mean, just by definition it can't, that a book like Lucifer would. So it was quite difficult, but there had been, you know, sort of realistic violence in earlier novels that I'd written, even though they weren't, you know, on the face of it anyway, crime novels. It's something that's been, well, I hope it's something that's been present in all the books that I've written. I am a fan of smell on the page. We live in this ridiculous deodorized, sanitized world, as if scent is no longer of any kind of significance to us. But it wasn't that long ago in our evolutionary history that smell was very important. And also I think that if you can get smell onto the page, it does something very immediate to a reader. I mean, if you can pinpoint a smell, it's very difficult. I mean, not to blow my own trumpet, but I don't know how well it works. But it is an immediate, it's almost like actually getting the smell. If a writer can describe it in exactly the right way or evoke it, it's a very immediate reaction from the reader. You know, and if you go back, read Shakespeare, half the metaphors and similes, half the figurative language is cast in terms of smell or taste or touch. Whereas, you know, once you get into the modern era, we live in a visually framed world. You know, much more of the figurative language is delivered in terms of sound and sight. So I've always made an effort to have odour as a part of my books, because it's a real part of everybody's life that's neglected, you know.